Just to begin with, and what year were you born, and where did you grow up?
Yeah, I was born on the first day of September, which is important, 1962.
Why is that an
Um,
important date?
it was always the beginning of school back home. Not the first day of September, but the next day to it. And I always knew coming up to my birthday, within a few days, I'm in school. And I
Oh, so you
loved
associate your birthday with
the beginning of
beginning
the
of a new
school
school
term.
year.
Yeah, the
Wow.
school term, which meant getting back into your classroom and getting new books and meeting your teachers and getting with your friends. And it was just
Yeah.
a pleasant experience for me. I think a lot of kids dread the beginning of school, but I looked forward to it, and my birthday indicated it was close.
And that
Born
was
in Belfast. Yeah,
That's 1962, and born in the city of Belfast.
yep, Belfast City Hospital. Um, and then taken home to North Boundary Street, which is at the bottom of the Shankill Road. Yeah.
So you've mentioned Belfast, you've mentioned Shankill Road, and born in '62, and to my knowledge, just the sense I have, the Troubles, which I know have a very long history, and which the repercussions continue to this moment. But my sense is that they were at their most intense in the late '60s to the mid '70s.
Yeah.
Which, if that's right, in your life, where you're
Yeah.
at that position where you're becoming increasingly aware of the world, self-conscious,
Yeah.
that's when that literally the part of the world you're in is blowing up.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, my earliest recollection of my young boyhood, things that I could remember, was a peaceful Belfast, was cousins. And on my mother's side, I have about 50 cousins, and we're very tribal, we all live within the same neighborhood. But it was very peaceful, we'd ride our bicycles, we'd be in each other's house every day, all the time. You grew up as latchkey kids, which meant that, your mom and dad may be away, but there's always aunts and uncles or older cousins that would be taking care of you, you were never felt in danger or anything. So very pleasant memories at the beginning of my life, although while the Troubles didn't really begin till late in the '60s, '69, the working up to that, you could feel around '65, '66 that there's tension. There's now language being used about Catholics and about Protestants. There's now discrimination being felt and taught. And especially with my father, who, was really behind the cause of loyalism. He was pro-loyalist, and early on he got the cause of loyalism, really began to embody it. So by the late 60s, he was in full throttle with the UVF, but there's always a mounting up to something like that. And I could recognize the tensions probably around 6 years old.
Yeah.
I recognized there's tremendous tension here.
You don't know what's going on, but you can feel it.
Yeah.
You've just sort of mentioned a whole bunch of things that I'd love to follow up. You just said that your dad, I think you used the phrase full throttle with the cause of loyalism. What was, and you mentioned the UVS, the Ulster Volunteer Force, is that right?
Yeah.
So these two things are related. So can you tell us what was loyalism? What does that mean? Loyal to what?
Yes.
And then what is the Ulster Volunteer Force?
Yeah. So Ireland at one point was a united nation. Now you're going back hundreds of years when Britain came in, and Britain was building its empire, and Ireland was one of the countries that Britain went into and ruled. The Irish have always wanted their country back, and so there has been rebellion after rebellion. The IRA, which we'll talk about, is the Irish Republican Army, and they would be the paramilitary organization on the nationalist side, the nationalists being they want a united Ireland back. The loyalists then is those folks in Northern Ireland mainly who remain loyal to the United Kingdom. So if you ask any Irish boy there, who are you loyal to? What does that mean? They're most often they're going to say the Queen of England, not the Prime Minister, but the Queen of England. So there's a real sense of loyalty. We are born on the island of Ireland, but we are British. We're citizens of the United Kingdom, and we want to keep that union together.
So you want to stay politically connected to London, not to Dublin. You don't
Right.
want to become politically
Right.
connected. Or you, meaning the loyalists
Yeah.
in Britain.
Yeah.
And you said that your dad was with the Ulster Volunteer Force. What was that?
So the Ulster Volunteer Force would have been the loyalist paramilitary organization. So the IRA, the UVF, both terrorist organizations. In fact, I think it was in the late 90s, they were considered the most sophisticated terrorist organizations in the world by the American CIA. So these are well-funded terrorist organizations that have committed, terrible atrocities on both sides.
Let me just pause you.
Yeah.
Let me just pause here and connect two thoughts.
Yeah.
Right, and it makes me uncomfortable to say this, but you said your dad was full throttle and with the UVF, the Ulster Volunteer Force, and then you just called the Ulster Volunteer Force a terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Which translated as my dad was a member of a terrorist organization.
Right. Yeah, my dad became a member of the terrorist organization knowingly, willingly. It was no secret society that you get into. This was a well-known terrorist organization by people throughout the United Kingdom. My father grew up, oddly enough, in a devout Christian home. Devout in the sense that there was no television, no radio. The newspaper would have been read during the weekdays, but not on the weekends. Anytime the church door was open, my father was dragged along to church. But at the age of 14, my father ran away from home. Now that's terribly young. And he never returned. In fact, he never graduated from high school. He dropped absolutely out of life with mom and dad in school. So that places him on the streets of Belfast where he's drinking, he's fighting, and he loved to fight. He's smoking, he's gambling, all those types of things. It wasn't until he was around 18, 19 that he begins to associate himself with the UVF. And you get into the UVF. I mean, there's a ceremony. Not anyone can just sign up for the UVF. So you're sort of credentialed. You're looked at. They do a background check. Not everyone can belong to a terrorist organization.
Wow.
And so then you're in probably at the bottom of the ladder, the bottom rung. And then through time and experience and the building of trust, you start climbing up. And that's what my father started to do. And so by the time 1969 comes along, he is in all the way. He is full throttle. He is a man in charge, a man making decisions. So one example of that, Preston, when I was around maybe 7 years old, I remember my mother coming out of the house with a gun in her hand, and she stopped the milk lorry and told the milkman to clear off. And then all of us kids, I mean, these were kids, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, we took those crates of milk bottles that were empty and we started filling them up with petrol and sugar and cotton wool and then a thread.
And you were doing it?
Yeah, we made petrol bombs, and all those crates were then stored in my back entryway.
Did you know what you were doing?
Yeah.
How old are you?
7 years old. Yeah, 7 or 8 years old. And I imagine there was close to 100 petrol bombs. And then a few nights later, I'm sitting on the stairs that go up to my bedroom, just sitting on the stairs because my father's having a meeting with some men, and these men probably were, late teens, early 20s. And I heard him say, there's a street, and you can see it from here, and the people, row homes, all these row homes, and they're Catholics. And I want you to burn them out, right? So that he was giving them the orders to go down sometime in the night, the darkness, throw the petrol bombs in through the living room windows and burn these families out. And it was a few days later, I'm on the way to school, and I could see all the smoke coming out of these homes as I walked to school. And I knew then, well, that was my father. And my father made that happen. That was his work. And that was the first time that I began to question why. I wasn't proud of my father at that moment. I wasn't ready to tell people, oh, my dad, managed to burn the Catholics out of their row homes. I don't think I was ashamed of it either. I was just stunned by it and saying, why would we do this? Why am I to hate Catholics? But that was an example of his influence on a small scale.
Suppose we could bring your dad in the room right now, because I'm conjuring this image in my mind of let's get the 7-year-olds involved.
Yeah.
So let's pull him into the room now and say, why would you think that was a good idea? I mean, let's just say that your cause in some sense is just, and I don't think we're willing to say that, but let's just, for the sake of argument, say the cause is just. But still, you're going to pull a 7-year-old into this? What would he have said?
Well, he would certainly understand the term discipleship. That was a popular term even back then in his own Christian upbringing. And he would transfer that over to terrorism, bringing young boys in, particularly young boys, and begin to groom them so that by the time they're 16, they're ready to go into action. So the terrorist organizations rely on numbers, large numbers. Rely largely with males. Now there's some roles for the female even within the terrorist organization, some I know of. But he was grooming me. I was, in my father's eyes, to be the next Billy Stevenson, to pick up the gauntlet and carry it on for him. And he saw all my mates as potential members of the UVF as well.
Do you know if any of those whose homes were hit by those petrol bombs, were any of them killed?
I don't think so, but I don't know the answer to that. I would doubt anyone was killed. That particular burning happened to get a lot of recognition, probably because of its geographical location to the Shankill. So there would be a lot about that on YouTube today, that burning.
This was, in what year was this?
I would say probably around 1970.
So I want to come back. You just referred to the Shankill, and we'll talk about that, sort of what it is, but also as a symbol.
Yeah.
You're 7 years old. You're obviously not thinking at a sophisticated level. You're doing what you're told. You just saw your mom with a gun. If for no other reason, you do what you're told.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a memory that sticks with you. Filling up those bottles, has that memory also been, is that memory still a burden to you?
No, I think initially, Preston, I enjoyed the whole exercise. I mean, I enjoyed I enjoyed the smell of the petrol. I really liked the project. I was able to complete from the beginning to the end. I mean, we produced a petrol bomb. It wasn't until a few days later where I see the damage that it caused that I began to think, why? You know, why did I enjoy that so much? And then with my mother, with the gun, I remember my mother, I still see her coming out with that gun. And at that time I thought, what's she doing with a gun? You know, I should be the one with the gun. I'm old enough and I'm the male. I should be holding the gun. And it wasn't long after that that my father gave me my own gun. I was probably 7 years old. And it was a .38 special, and it was wrapped up in a white handkerchief. And my father told me, that's your gun, Billy. But the only time I want you to use that is to protect your mother and your sister. And it's up in the kitchen cupboard there. So I had now sort of graduated. I was recognized as a young man at the age of 7.
Wow.
Who was capable, or at least trusted, to use a gun.
At any point, did you feel yourself walking that path of picking up the torch, so to say, and becoming the warrior for the next generation? I mean, at this point, you're being drafted, and there's not much you can do about it.
Yeah.
But did you ever feel yourself exercising your own volition and saying, okay, well, this is the path I'll go in?
Yeah, I mean, at that point, when you are trusted with your own gun, I feel at this point I'm light years ahead of most young boys on the Shankill. And it's because I'm the son of Billy Stevenson, so I have something here. You know, it's just like a badge of honor or
almost
something.
A status?
Yeah, status symbol.
Wow.
But not long after that, my 2 cousins were sitting in a living room talking to my father. And when I heard them tell the story of how they killed 2 Catholic men, that was a turning point for me, because I looked at my cousins as heroes. They were amazing people. And it dawned on me, wait a minute, how could they have killed someone? You know, so my impression of them changed drastically from wonderful male cousins, leaders, heroes, to scary. I'm really disappointed in that. I'm really disappointed in them. Now, I don't know how that came to me. Maybe it's my conscience was beginning to grow a little bit and maybe beginning to weigh in, you know. But it was at that point that I realized that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. I don't want to be like my father. I don't want to be like my cousins. There's got to be another way. There has to be another way. And so the gun then became not interested at all. Never went to see it, never held it. My interest in it just disappeared.
So how did you break out? Now, I want to attach what you just said to where we were at the beginning, and your birthday, and how that signals to you the beginning of the school year, and books and teachers. And you said that a lot of people didn't like that time of year, but I looked forward to that time of year. And so the question is, how did you, you're in this world. Not only are you in Belfast during the time of the Troubles, but your dad is very much involved in it and wanting to get you involved. How are you able to, were you able completely to separate yourself from it? Or did you have to kind of play a game where you've got to go along to a certain extent, but maintain some independence at the same time? How were you able to create your own path?
So you're right in that I was surrounded by it. My uncles, my cousins, especially the older ones, my father, are all involved. Plus, now I have men coming to my home of similar status to my father. Men that, committed terrible things. And I'm sitting on the stairs again listening to these stories or these plans, and then I'm able to witness them as they're developed. I think at that point I started my own resistance. I knew that deep down inside it was wrong to burn those Catholics out. It was wrong for my cousins to murder 2 Catholics. Deep down inside I knew that to my very heart's core. And I decided that I'm not going to play along. I'm going to resist this. I'm going to ask the questions. And that's exactly what I did. I started asking the questions. Why? Why do I have to hate Catholics? Why can't I go down there and play with the Catholics? Why are we petrol bombing Catholics? And why are they shooting at us?
Why are they doing the same thing in
Why are they
return?
doing the same thing as us? I didn't understand what started all this.
What were the answers to the questions?
The answers was more of a beating. My father would beat me to toughen me up.
So
He didn't want to.
ask questions.
Yeah, don't ask those questions. You know, don't embarrass me here. You're my son. You're supposed to know the answers. Just follow. You know, go along with it. And so my father, I think, might have been embarrassed of me at some point during that stage. But I didn't cower to that. I continued pressing. Why? Because I really did want to understand why we're doing this.
Did you ever find yourself in a position where you had to make a clear choice? It's not like, well, I'm just kind of in this world and I'm in it, but I don't really want to be in it. But where you're actually confronted with a real decision that you had to make.
I do remember on one particular occasion, my grandmother was in my home, and it was a small row home. I mean, my bedroom was upstairs. It had holes in the roof anytime it rained, which in Ireland it rains all the time. I needed 3 or 4 buckets to capture the rain and then throw it out.
Wow.
Our toilet was outside with no indoor plumbing. We had a kitchen sink, and when you took a bath, it was in a sort of a little tin bathtub, and you stood in it and washed yourself that way. But my grandmother, Nellie, was there that day. That's my mother's mother. And all of a sudden, the living room window is being shot out by machine gun fire. And that's the IRA trying to kill my father, or at least spook him. And my grandmother dove on top of me. And, all the way up until she died, she says, I saved your life, I saved your life. And I would tease her back saying, yeah, you did, from the IRA bullets, but you almost killed me. The weight of you almost killed me.
Yeah.
But when that happened, I remember that evening thinking, that's why I have that gun. I was supposed to be ready, because if they were coming in, I needed to protect my grandmother and my mother, myself, my sister. And there was that moment in time, I could have easily turned the other way and said, all right, I'm not going to protect my family from the IRA. But I didn't go and get the gun. I thought, but I didn't go and get the gun. The only time I got that gun, Preston, was at a low point in life as a young boy, when you're afraid of your father, you're afraid of everything that's going on around you, the bombs, the shootings, the burnings, the tar and feathering. And there's no peace, there's no safe place. And my father, at that point, I hated him so much because of it. It seemed like it all centered on him. And I went and got that gun, and I knew my father was coming home, and I sat at the bottom of the stairs with the gun pointing at the door. So as soon as he opened the door, I was going to kill him. Because my thinking was, if I get rid of him, my fear is all gone, right? He's gone. He's not going to beat me anymore. He's not going to beat my mother anymore. He's not going to come home drunk anymore. He's not going to bring bad guys in. There'll be no more bombs arriving in the middle of the night or machine guns coming in. But when he put his key into the barrel of the lock, I panicked and I ran upstairs. I couldn't do it. I turned that gun on myself, and I wanted to pull the trigger. I wanted to be out of pain, out of fear. I wanted it all just to stop, and I couldn't pull the trigger. So I put that gun back in the handkerchief, back in the kitchen closet, and I never touched it again. But I was determined that there had to be a different way of life. There had to be something different, at least for me, in this world.
Wow.
Other than a bullet.
There's no way to know, but suppose without your knowing, you know, your dad was just on the other side here and
Yeah.
and could hear everything that you've been saying.
Yeah.
And then we brought him in now. What do you suppose he might say?
Well, knowing my dad, he would have said, "Thank you for not pulling the trigger."
Right, yeah.
And then I think he would have followed up. It was a good decision, Billy. Look where you are today.
Mm.
Instead of killing yourself at the age of 8, you look where you are today. So blessed. So.
What little I know about the Troubles, you know, and
Yeah.
I think I've learned more in the past 20 minutes than, you know, I've known ever since. But, you know, I understand the historical grievances. Nationalism is a powerful thing. I mean, and very early in the discussion, you referred to your tribe, you know, your family as a tribe. And I think human beings are inherently tribal. I don't think there's really much we can do about that.
Yeah.
We just have to decide what tribe we're a member of and try to be kind to other tribes, but I don't know that it's possible to beat tribalism out of people. I understand tribalism is a fact. I understand that it's incredibly easy for most people to justify doing evil things in their mind. They come up with rationalizations.
Yep.
And yet there's just something about it that just seems incredibly insane. I mean, even these stories that you've told, your mom coming out with the gun, chasing off the milkman, taking the bottles, making the petrol bombs, bombing the homes of the Catholics nearby, as if somehow this is going to make the world a better place. It's just, of course, it's not going to make the world a better place. This is crazy. This is just absolutely.
That's what I was thinking at the age of 8. You've just said what I was thinking. This is crazy. The hard part, Preston, is that you're part of a tribe, and you're that one little guy who's a ghost in the machine because he's not following along. He's beginning to resist. He's beginning to dream a little bit.
And was school part of that?
Yeah, school was part of it. I mean, Mrs. Stewart, I still love Mrs. Stewart, and she's probably in heaven today, but she was my P4 art teacher. Beautiful woman to look upon. So I think I had a crush on her, and even then I thought she has a crush on me because I was one of her favorites. But she told me to look out the window, and in my classroom there were windows, big windows, and you could look out and you could see the clouds, you could see the rain or the sun, you could see the airplane, and she started an exercise of us, I want you to draw whatever it is you see outside the windows. So, you know, you'd have drawings of blue skies and clouds, maybe some rainy days, maybe an airplane. But what I was drawing outside the window was more than that. You know, I saw boats. I remember her telling me, "Do you know boats don't fly?" And I said, "I do understand that, but I'm going to put boats in what I see out the window as well, and big lorries, and aeroplanes, and people." And she noticed something in that, and she says, why are you doing that? And I said, because if I stop and think about it, I'm dreaming, I'm daydreaming. I just close my eyes and daydream outside that window, like you told me to. And so that's why I'm putting it down there. Well, that started a whole conversation about dreaming and the encouragement to dream. She probably encouraged me the whole year to dream of life outside the Shankill Road. And I give her the credit for that, because that has become such an important part of my life. I may be right now stuck on the Shankill, stuck in this family. I may not be able to make any decisions about my own situation, but I can dream.
It sounds like school was a respite. Was it really, when you walked onto campus, was it possible to kind of block the troubles out?
Yeah, I loved school because it was a safe environment. It was a predictable environment. I also excelled there. I was well liked. I was always liked by my classmates, by the teachers. I was popular in my own family. My grandmother said that I was her favourite, which Irish people do. So I was the favourite grandson, and my female cousin Helen was the favourite granddaughter, and that brought certain privileges along with it as well. Yeah. But school was a place where, you know, every morning at 9 o'clock you got a half pint of milk. And to this day, milk is my comfort food. It's my go-to. If I'm stressed, I'll go get a glass of milk. On the way to school, there was a wee shop, it's still there today, called The Cabin. And it was a sweetie shop or a candy shop. They also sold newspapers. It was a newspaper agent. But I began this practice of every day going to The Cabin and stealing a Kit Kat. It's the only thing I stole was a Kit Kat every day, because I really enjoyed a Kit Kat with my milk at school, and I was the only kid that had the Kit Kat.
And you did this daily?
Daily, yeah, every week.
Never got caught?
Never got caught. When I married Mindy, who started playing with my conscience, she said, have you ever went back to apologize? And I remember, it's going back a few years now, I remember, why would I do that? Why would I go back and apologize? That's silly. But that lingered with me a few days, and thought, she's planted a seed now, I feel guilty, so I'm going to go back and apologize, and I should offer to pay the man something. Well, I did go back, and the same gentleman was still there. Wow. This time he's much older, no hair, a lot heavier. And I said, well, here's my story. And I was shocked, Preston, because he said, I remember you. Wow. I saw you every day. And I said to him, well, why didn't you stop me? And he said, your father was Billy Stevenson. There's nothing I could do, you know. Wow. People paid my father protection money. Wow. And he might have been one of them. So no one was going to mess with my father, which if I had known that then, it might have given me more license to do things. So yeah. I'm glad I didn't know it. Wow. But school was that place. I enjoyed learning, and I enjoyed Mrs. Stewart. I mean, I just enjoyed, especially story time, and the stories were about places that were far away.
It sounds like she's one of these teachers who not only gives you a great educational experience, but who in some sense saved your life as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I believe there are a lot of teachers out there still today that are doing just that, you know.
We've mentioned Shankill Road a number of times. It's a place. You can Google it. It's an actual, as we speak, cars are going up and down. Yeah. So, I mean, tell us about the actual place, but it's also a symbol.
Yes, it is.
I imagine to be a boy of the Shankill is, you know, you just say that, and that has a whole, you know, bucket full of meaning. So tell us about the place, describe the place, and then the meaning of the place, Shankill Road.
Yeah, the Shankill Road, it begins at at the very epicenter of the city of Belfast, right? So you leave the whole shopping district, and one of the roads that takes you further away is the Shankill Road. So it's very connected to the city centre. It's a road that probably only goes for a couple of miles, and then it bangs into the Black Mountain. But all the streets off the Shankill Road are all part of that Shankill Road community. The Shankill Road community would be, it would be the epicenter of loyalism in Northern Ireland. There's no other area that would be more loyal than the Shankill Road. Also in terms of terrorism, loyalist terrorist organisations, the Shankill is the place. Now, a quarter of a mile away is the Falls Road, and that's true of the nationalist side and the IRA. Okay, so I would say over 50% of the atrocities that took place in Northern Ireland during the Troubles took place probably within 2 square miles. My neighbourhood was in that. So there was so much violence, killing between the Falls and the Shankill, that in 1972 the British military came in and the engineers began to build this peace wall that simply separates the two communities, the nationalists, the loyalists, the Catholics, the Protestants, the IRA, the UVF. And I remember leaving school, Melbourne Street Primary School, and running to the peace wall to see the army, build this wall. And they built it, and it was effective. What they did was, on the streets, they put these big steel gates that they could open and close. And so if there was times of, okay, things have been peaceful for a couple of weeks now, they would open up those gates and allow traffic through. And then when violence started, they'd lock those gates again. Those gates are still there today. That wall is still there today. Wow. And what the Royal Engineers needed to do was come back a second time and build it larger, and thought, well, it's large enough now, but it wasn't. They had to come back a third time and build it even larger, and that wall's still there today. It's a constant reminder of dark days, segregation, hatred, bitterness, resentment. All that wall is so symbolic. And I dream of someday, before I die, that wall will come down. Right? I can't imagine what that looks like, but I hope to live to see that wall come down, and then in its place maybe playing fields where these two communities who have now said we want peace, who have now maintained a ceasefire for 22 years, that it's, peace is possible, and it's likely that this wall could come down, but it needs to be up to them to bring it down.
You refer to the bombs, the bullets, and this may not be a question, and I don't mean this as a prying question or a question to try to get at something gory, but do you have recollections of seeing what actually happened as a result of these bombs, as a result of these bullets? You know that people are being killed, that the body count is growing as you're growing.
Yeah, the bombs were not just on the news at the end of the day. The bombs could have been 2 streets away. You felt it, you heard it, you were part of it. People were affected by it. Someone might have died or lost an arm that you knew. But there were a few bombs. The Abercorn restaurant, for example, was a bomb that went off as I was walking past the restaurant, and I had walked past maybe 25 feet when that bomb went off. Wow. Lifting me off the ground. And I turned back, and the glass and the wood, the chairs, everything, smoke. And then people beginning to crawl out. The people outside responding, going in to help people out. The emergency services coming, the fire, the ambulance, the police. And I remember running back. My first response was, I think I was just frozen. But then I remember running back to help people come out. And one of the guys that I remember coming out had the leg of a chair, a wooden leg, right through his leg. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get that out? You know, if I pull this, it's going to hurt him. Well, you know, I'm a young boy thinking, well, I need to pull that out. Obviously, he was, you know, don't touch it. And the other adults were like, stay here till the ambulance come, they'll take care of it. Wow. But I was very much into fixing things right away. I've always been that way, going for the solution. Why wait till the ambulance comes? We can pull this out now. This is hurting him now. I didn't have the knowledge base to say, no, that's better left for the professionals. So when bombs went off, there was this unusual panic and hysteria and adrenaline combined with this very calm response. The damage is done. Now we need to wait. The system's going to, you know, take care of this. The police will arrive. The firemen will arrive, put out the fire. The ambulance will take care, you know. It's interesting.
Yeah, I'm assuming this bomb was planted by the IRA.
Planted by the IRA, yes. Yeah.
And so then one of the things that's probably going to be happening in the next couple hours is UVF guys planning retaliation.
Yep.
And it just keeps going.
It keeps going.
Just keeps going.
Yep. Let's
run through some photos you sent me.
Yeah.
Just give us a few sentences on each of these. This one here, Lieutenant Colonel William Bucky.
Yeah, so murals are very, very popular in my neighborhood, and they've become problematic for me. But Lieutenant William Bucky was a member of the terrorist organization.
The UVF?
Yep. And so you see there, these are men that I would have known, but you see there that even within a terrorist organizations, there's structure, there's systems, there's rankings, there's commanders, there's lieutenants, you know. They're every bit as organized as a modern military. They're well funded. I mean, the amount of money coming from America allowed the IRA, the UVF, to go to, well, Muammar Gaddafi of Libya was the one-stop shop for military arms. So they'd go buy it all there, and then it would be delivered on fishing vessels coming onto the shores of Ireland at night and then transported by lorry. And my home happened to be one of the destinations of bringing machine guns, rifles, bombs, detonators.
And you saw these things?
Yeah, right there in the corner. So this guy, you'll see the columns there listing names of young men who have died for the cause of loyalism. And maybe they had been shot by the IRA or in a bomb. You will also see there, anytime you go to it, fresh flowers or a new reef. I mean, this is a living memory. This guy is still a hero in this working class area of the Shankill Road. But you will notice that he was murdered by his own. Okay, so that's really odd. I don't know of another mural like that.
Why?
Well, clearly he did something wrong, and this is in the ranks of the IRA and the UVF. If you've done something wrong, you will pay for it. And I'd watched my father do the kneecappings. I mean, I knew there were punishments.
You saw that?
Oh yes. But this guy died, so it had to be something really big. So the things that would cause that sort of stuff would be, we saw you coming out of a police office. Now we want to know what you were there for and what did you tell them. If you get antsy or nervous there, then there's suspicion, and that suspicion may lead to a kneecapping, just one. If it's something more serious than that, yeah. Or if you married a Catholic, if you fell in love with a Catholic, which was an absolute no-no, you would have to leave Northern Ireland and never come back. Or if you just ignored it, you'd be shot dead. Right? So these types of punishments took place within the ranks. So the UVF would say, whatever he did, you know, you've been great, you've done a lot of good stuff for us. Sorry that you had to do that, because we're going to have to kill you now. But here's the good news, we're going to make this beautiful mural for you that remembers you, remembers who you are. Okay?
It all just sounds very gangster.
Yeah, it is. It is very gangster, because his mom and dad live down the street, and his killers live up the street. But at least they put a mural up for him. You know, that's special.
You said at the beginning, you know, this is about loyalty to the Queen.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm just thinking, the Queen probably isn't down with all this stuff.
No.
Right.
No.
I mean, do folks?
No.
Did that conversation ever come up? I mean, we're doing this out of loyalty to the Queen, but if you just think about it for maybe 1 second, you would conclude the Queen is not going to support buying arms from Muammar Gaddafi,
Right.
using those in
Right.
the civil war in Northern
Yep.
Ireland.
Yep.
Did that ever come up?
Oh yeah, that would come up. Yeah, that would come up, and it was always explained away. Well, of course, the Queen's not going to condone this. We don't expect her to condone this. What we do expect, that she will remain faithful to Northern Ireland. In other words, she won't apply any pressure to the Parliament to say, you know what, give the 6 counties of Northern Ireland back. Let Ireland become one nation again. So they're expecting that of her. Don't interfere with that, because we want to remain part of the United Kingdom.
How is it?
So,
We have other photos here, but
yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine that the British authorities don't know that arms are going from Libya to your dad's house.
Yeah.
So
I think they
was
did
your house
know.
ever raided, or?
Nope. Nope. Yeah, the British authorities knew who the IRA were, the UVF were. They could have raided at any given time and got a lot of weapons. Why they didn't, I don't know the answer to that. Why they didn't pick terrorists up and lock them away, I don't know. But they were not, these guys were not secrets. You know, these guys were out. Now the reason why a terrorist may stay out of prison is because there's always a fall guy. You know, if there was a murder and you did it, you're not going to prison for it. You've got someone else in the lineup that's going to take it for you.
Sure.
So it is really a gangster world there.
What about this image here?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I grew up with this, and this is the barrel, I think, of an AK-47, and no matter where you go, to the left of it or to the right of it, or you're standing right in front of it, that barrel is pointing right at you.
Mm.
I mean, it's well done in terms of its artistic qualities.
Yeah.
But again,
I feel like the barrel of the gun is following you.
it's following you, yeah. But the message again is this is who you could be. So as you're going past that as a young boy, maybe your dad or your mom's telling you, you know, you could be up there one of these days. But to get up there, look what you have to do. And as a young boy, I didn't want to do those
You
things.
got to build your resume, starting as a 7-year-old bomb maker, and
Right.
work your way up.
Yep, that's right.
What about this one? Piece by piece.
Yeah, that's the peace wall. That's just a portion of the peace wall that goes for well over a mile. That's the peace wall that separated my neighbourhood from the Falls Road. And it shows you the 3 levels there: the concrete, and then the metal, and then the wire up at the top. That's still there today, and it's still such a massive indictment to Ireland, that we both acknowledge that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, Catholic and Protestant, right? And yet we will murder each other because of that. So as a young boy, I was the first in my family to become a Christian. So as a young boy, I gave my life to Jesus Christ. I'm now reading the Bible. And I know Catholics go to church and Protestants go to church. So what is it? You know, we both love Jesus.
Mm.
So why are we doing this? It just got more and more complicated.
You said something interesting. You said that you became a Christian.
Yeah.
You grew up among Protestants.
Yeah.
But that's distinct from being a Christian.
Right. Exactly.
So it sounds like when we talk about this Protestant-Catholic divide, you know, they're not fighting over some theological issue, really. It's more historical, cultural.
Political, yes.
This is the word we put on our tribe in this neighborhood. Linked to a certain history and all of that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think Northern Ireland, you know, you have your Protestant and your Catholics. So the political groupings of Ireland would be a Protestant unionist. So the unionist would be a law-abiding citizen. They wouldn't do the things that loyalists do. The loyalists were the low man on the totem pole that was involved in terrorism, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the orders came from the unionists, right? A lot of the money came from the unionists, but they were not involved. They would not have considered themselves involved. They used the loyalists to get the job done.
They're facilitating.
And then on the Catholic side, the nationalists would have been, again, the unionist level. It was the Republicans on the nationalist side that were the terrorists and got the job done. So in society growing up, I knew that I didn't belong in the unionist side of the tracks. They were out there somewhere I'd never been. That I was a loyalist. That's lower than a unionist.
So yeah, so this is something I didn't really know, that there's these distinctions, loyalists, unionists on the same side, but you know,
there is that
operations,
right.
Nationalist, Republican on the same side, but different operations.
Yes, yeah.
A couple more photos here.
Yeah.
A few more. This one. Does that say 60?
No, that's the Gold Rush mural. So that's my mural. So when I say my mom or my grandparents used to say, Billy, what when you grew up you could have a mural like that. I didn't want a mural like that.
A mural like the guy shooting.
Yeah, but I didn't ever dream that there would be a mural on the Shankill Road for me. So it goes back to a story in 1969 when the British government was wanting to depopulate the lower Shankill Road and bring it into a city sector. Essentially they started knocking all the row homes down, and I felt if they depopulate that area, it's going to be a safer environment for people going into the city. So one day I look across the street and the builders are knocking down the houses, but they stop for the day and go home. And I look over and it's a 2-story house with an attic, and there's a fireplace that goes all the way up. And I say to my sister Isabel, I'm going to climb into the fire, into the chimney. I'm going to climb all the way up. When I get up there, I'll tell you what I see. Okay? I'm 6 years old. 6, maybe 8. Anyway, I do it. I climb all the way up, and I'm covered in soot by the time I get up to the top. But I tell Isabel, can't see anything. It's rubbish. Shouldn't have done it. But on the way down, I see this box, and I reach for the box, but it's just so heavy. And long story short, I got it down. I simply closed myself and I fell 20-something feet, cutting my knees and elbows, but I had that box. And I got it opened, And I had taken it inside the house, I know 4 times, because my mom says that she kicked me out of the house 4 times because I was so dirty from the suit. But I got it open, and there was £400,000 worth of solid gold sovereigns dating back to Queen Victoria. That's millions today. So here I am as a young boy with a treasure.
And you found it in a chimney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This home belonged to 2 Jewish sisters. And for whatever reason, they kept the gold sovereigns in this box, but they died and left the gold sovereigns there. Well, within minutes, 30 minutes, the police is there, the army's there. Shortly after that, the newspaper, BBC, is there. I'm all over the newspapers of the United Kingdom. I'm on the TV. I'm a celebrity, right? There's pictures of me, and anyway.
What happened to the gold? Where they
Well, see, I knew even as a young boy, if the police or the army get their hands in this money, I'll never see it. So I knew even then, I've got to distribute this. And before they got there, I had distributed or hidden all of the money. And no matter how many times throughout the next couple of weeks, they interrogated me, they threatened me. I mean, I was going to be in jail the rest of my life, and my mom and dad were going to go in jail too if I don't tell them what I did with this.
Yeah.
I knew that was all nonsense, and they're not going to crack me. Never will they crack me.
And you're like 8 years old?
8 years old. And so they never got it. They never got one single gold coin. But my aunts and uncles and cousins did. And I like to say there's shops along the Shankill Road called Stevenson, you know. A bakery shop, a fruit and veg shop. But I like to say jokingly that I single-handedly stimulated my own local economy back in 1969.
And that's what this
That's what it is, yeah.
mural is.
So that covered up a mural
Yeah.
of the AK-47s.
Wow. And
Because-
did you have this commissioned? Oh.
No, about 20 years ago, I had been working with Parliament as a result of meeting with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton opened up the doors of the Northern Irish Parliament, the Assembly, for me to go in and do some work. And one of the things I said was, we are not going to change the next generation of young people in these areas if while they're growing up, going to school, they're going to see these types of murals. Something needs to be done, because history's just going to repeat itself, you know. They're glorifying terrorists. It was one summer 20 years ago, I was there with the graduate team, and I was giving them a tour of my neighborhood, and I saw these men with a van, and they're painting over this mural. Now, these murals stay for decades. You don't touch them. You don't vandalize them. They're well, you know, they're protected.
Almost a kind of a
Yeah.
stained glass.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
historical stories and things.
A poor man's stained glass window. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went over and I talked to them. I said, one thing struck me right away is that these were artists from Dublin. It's Dublin. These are Catholics from Dublin.
Is that safe for them to be where they were?
No, but that's significant that they got permission. So that's the Shankill Road saying, okay, we want to clean the place up. We want a better future for our kids. So okay, let's take that really bad mural down and let's put something up in its place that tells the story, a good story, a positive story about our neighborhood. And let's reach the hand of friendship across the border. And this is huge. So I asked these gentlemen, what are you replacing it with? And they said, well, there's a story about some kid who found a pot of gold, you know, and it's a typical, you know, leprechaun story, but people in this community really believe it.
Yeah.
And then And then there's some that said, oh, it was just an old yarn that some old man spun. But we have the newspaper article. And I said, you do? And I said, could I see the newspaper article?
Mm.
And they showed it to me. They went to the newspaper and went into the archives and found it. And it starts, wee Billy Stevenson, age 7. I was 7 years old.
Wow.
And when I told them that I'm the Billy Stevenson, they honestly, they were jumping up and down, you know, so excited, but it's not true. We can't, you know, it's not true. I said, well, if I showed you my passport? Because I had my passport on me. And I showed it to them, and they were just blown away. Well, the next thing I know, the Lord Mayor called me and said, we want you for the unveiling.
Wow.
So this here, again, is so unusual. I could not have scripted this or commissioned this.
Wow.
But this mural, I think, was designed by God the Almighty, because of it, I am now going into the public schools in my neighborhood to tell them the story of that gold rush in 1969. And I can tell them all about it. And the kids, maybe 70, 80 kids just listening.
And since the mural is there, that's what gives you the credibility.
Yep.
I'm the person you
Yep.
can attach to that mural. Wow.
Yeah. That's Samson and Goliath. Those are the two massive cranes that are part of the skyline of the city of Belfast. They are iconic. That's the shipyard, Harland and Wolff. That's what the H&W means. And that's the shipyard that made, you know, a lot of the great oil tankers and cruise ships. The Titanic being one of them was built in Belfast Harbour. Yeah. And so underneath those cranes and surrounding the shipyard are the working class communities of Belfast, and that's where I come from. So, you know, you wake up seeing it, you go to bed seeing it. It's become such a part of Belfast, and you look at it now almost romantically. When you see a photograph of it, it conjures up all sorts of lovely feelings for the city of Belfast. Yeah.
There's a saying, you can take the boy out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the boy.
Yeah.
And do you still identify as a boy from the Shankill?
I do, and sometimes that's unfortunately true. Yeah, you can take the boy off the Shankill, but you can't take the Shankill from the boy. Has resonated with me my whole life. So when I went to Korea, I went into Korean school, and there are bullies everywhere.
Bullies.
Bullies. It doesn't matter what culture you're in, there's always a bully.
Yeah, real quick, and I wish we had time to go into it, but just real quick, how in the world did you get from Northern Ireland to South Korea?
Yeah, so I was the first to become a Christian, then my mother, then my sister, and then my father. And my father was, you don't retire from the UVF, you know, you don't resign. The only way out is death. But because of who he was, we were told to get out of Northern Ireland and don't come back. And we went to South Korea as missionaries.
Wow.
So you can imagine, a few weeks ago he was a terrorist, and now he wants to be a missionary. What church is going to fund this? What mission organization is going to sponsor this? But God had all that figured out. So,
was your dad? By the way, I think it's important to notice that your dad was a terrorist in a Protestant organization that kicked him out when he became a Christian.
Yeah.
So there's a clear distinction between Christian and Protestant in this context.
Yep. And they
That's
insisted, you're out, but you better live a Christian life, or we will come after you. So here's a terrorist organization, and they know what a Christian life should look like.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were being watched for years. But going back to I didn't know how to work out conflict, or other than resorting to violence.
Yeah.
So you can take the boy from Shankill, but you can't take Shankill from the boy. One story would be, I had problems at school later on now.
And this is in Korea.
Yeah, and the way I worked that problem out was not the proper way. It was the Shankill Road way, but it was not appropriate. It was not proper. Mm-hmm. So a bully in school bullies me. I go home and tell my parents. My uncle, who was visiting, said, "Well, take care of it. Stop coming home and whining about this. Why am I supposed to take care of it? Take a chair and break it over his head. That'll send a message." So the next day, this guy comes in and he bumps me in the head with his elbow. He goes and sits down. I lift my chair and I walk around, and this teacher's watching me. And I lift it up and I come down on his head and cracked his head open. And I got suspended for 4 weeks for that. So I remember telling my uncle, clearly this is not, there's got to be a different way. Yeah. But that kid never bothered me again. In fact, we became really good friends. Another example was a teacher getting on my nerves. It was in science class. We're taking crude oil and boiling it to produce the gases, different types of gases. And this teacher was speaking to me in third person. What would he do? And he seemed like he was picking on me the whole time. So I just got mad one day and I took petrol and I threw it all over the classroom curtains and I burnt the whole classroom down. With students there, the teachers there. And again, I had no fear. What was he going to do? What was the school going to do? They could do nothing. I'll burn the classroom down and he will no longer treat me like this. He'll respect me.
Well, that sounds very much
a Shankill Road way
of doing it. The Shankill Road way of dealing with the world, yeah.
So we had a porta cabin brought in and I wasn't suspended from school for that.
Wow.
But I have had to learn that there is a different way to work out conflict. And I think this is a lesson that the whole world needs to learn today because we're full of conflict.
Oh yeah.
But there's a better way than violence, right? There's a much better way than the use of violence or name calling or mudslinging or political.
Was your dad's transition from Protestant terrorist to Christian missionary, was it on, I imagine there were at least bumps, but was it on the whole a successful transition? Yeah,
I mean, my father was a leader of men, very, very charismatic fellow. Everyone loved him. He became an amazing evangelist overnight.
Wow.
A great preacher. Many people are now in heaven because of his preaching. And he's been preaching all over the world. He's dead now, but he preached all over the world. Tremendously gifted evangelist. The story of my father becoming a Christian is a story in and of itself. We don't have the time to go into it, but it clearly, you see the hand of God in it. I am a product of the mercy of God, the love of God, the grace of God. I wouldn't be here if it were not for Jesus Christ, because you couldn't dream my life up or my father or mother's success. It was all God planned and ordained. And
wow.
Yeah.
And then you come to the United States for undergraduate school, and what school do you go to?
I went to Emmaus Bible College in Chicago. That was my dream, to come to America, so it came true. My first job, I became an illegal alien because I overstayed my welcome. I turned myself in at the Chicago immigration building that serves multiple states. And I'm there to turn myself in, thinking they would take leniency on me, but the lady said, no, you need to leave the country. You can come back, but you need to leave the country. And on the way out, this sizable black gentleman said to me, I hear you are from Ireland. And I said, yeah, Northern Ireland. And he asked me, do I have a minute? And I said, sure. Well, 30 minutes later, after we'd talked all about his Irish heritage, he said to me, your green card or your permanent residency will be in the mailbox in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
And again, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It's God. And then my first job then was with LG Corporation in Chicago. And they started me in 1982 at $80 an hour, which in 1982 for a Shankill Road boy was a lot of money. And I would be picked up in the morning, taken downtown Chicago, go up to a tall building, and I would simply sit at the head of a table, and I would interpret between Korean and American or English for these businessmen.
So you had picked up the Korean language while you were...
I was fluent. I graduated with a Korean diploma. I could read, write. At the end of the day, then I would maybe do some translation of documents.
Wow.
And then I realized, as a result of attending church, that I was biblically illiterate. I knew I loved Jesus Christ, but I didn't know anything about him. And that's where I introduced myself to a Bible college. I got accepted at Moody and Emmaus. I went to Emmaus. I spent 2 years of studying God's Word. Yeah.
And now you and I are speaking in Northwest Arkansas on the campus of John Brown University.
Yeah.
How long have you been here at John Brown University?
I will be entering my 37th year here at JBU.
Wow. And I think when most people, think of Billy Stevenson, their mind immediately goes to Northern Ireland, not only because, your accent is a reminder, but also because you brought, I don't know how many groups back to Northern Ireland. And so we have this photograph here, which I'm assuming was taken in Northern Ireland. Yep,
that's taken in Northern Ireland. That's at Malvern Street Primary School, where I'm telling the kids the story of the gold rush.
Yeah.
And then we were able to have the American students give each of those kids a Bible.
Wow.
A Bible that was given to them by an American. That's significant. A Bible that was printed in America. That is significant. So I've taken, I don't know how many groups, but I know we've taken over 3,000 John Brown University students to Ireland since 1994.
And you mentioned being involved, at least to some extent in the, or at least being in the circles of the various political processes and so on. Just how would you summarize going back to Northern Ireland? Why are you bringing Americans to Northern Ireland? What have you tried to do in Northern Ireland?
Well, Northern Ireland, when I left, I never wanted to go back. No one wanted to leave Northern Ireland more than me. And I never wanted to go back. So in 1994, when God was calling me back to Northern Ireland, Mindy and I had been taking mission trips to different parts of the world, but God put Northern Ireland on my mind, and it became my Nineveh. I didn't want to go. And I resisted and I resisted. And then I realized God's calling me back to my own people, and I need to obey. So I did. We were still there's troubles were still on. We're still biting each other. So a couple of things about that. I got permission to take a team of 17 students, and a couple of things that happened that were odd. One, the building that we were staying in for the whole 6 weeks was bombed by the IRA 2 weeks before departure.
Wow.
So we had to get new accommodations. I think the university assumed, when I informed them, that I had cancelled the trip, but I never remember cancelling the trip. I was just informing them that our lodging was bombed. So on the day of, I get a call from a particular vice president saying, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, we're leaving for Ireland this morning." "You cancelled." "No, I didn't cancel. I just got new house." So we were able to go, but it was a bumpy start. And then the rental vans, my uncle provided us with rental vans for the first 2 years. And it was odd because he would have them at the airport when we arrived, and this guy would give us the keys. And when we took them back to the airport, he said, just throw the keys in the rubbish. Don't worry about the keys, which is odd.
Mm.
And I never got a bill for 2 years. And then we were stopped with 3 full-size vans by the military, a routine check. And they told us these vans are all listed as stolen vehicles. Do you know that? And I said, no.
Oh, no.
So they let us go. We drove the stolen vehicles for another 3 or 4 weeks. And then I threw the keys in the rubbish. So I soon came to realize my uncle's stealing these vans for us to help us with missions. And that was his small way of helping John Brown University do missions in Northern Ireland.
Yeah, the life of the Shankill Road is sounding really complicated.
It is.
Yeah.
Probably similar to some places in Los Angeles, where you come from.
So you brought 3,000 roughly American students to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
Share with them some of these stories, I imagine.
Yeah, everyone wants to see where I was born and raised, so it's now part of it. The spring course is a peace and conflict reconciliation course that was designed by the CCCU, so I teach a course in that called Peacemaking. But they go, they love it. There's been I think there's been 14 marriages out of it between Americans and Irish.
Oh, is that right?
So it's been I think it's been a really good thing, certainly for my country, because my country has benefited so much from the American influence, JBU students.
Wow.
And I think the JBU student has benefited as well.
Right.
They've been blessed, so I think it's a win-win. Yeah.
Let's finish up with this poem. So, as we were planning this, I asked you to send me, if there's anything you thought I should read ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I was expecting maybe an essay or read this book or something. He sent me this poem. So I'd love to hear you read it, and then to tell me why you think this poem is important.
Sure. Well, let me preface it. It's called Ceasefire, but it's taken from a chapter in Homer's tragedy. You have Priam, the old king, and his son Hector is going into battle with Achilles. And at the end of the day, Achilles kills Hector. And then he desecrates Hector's body by driving it around the city 3 times. So you can imagine what it looked like at the end of that. But Hector's father, the old king Priam, comes into the enemy camp, risking his own life, to plead with Achilles, can I have my son's body back so that I can take him back and give him a proper burial. And that's what this poem's about. Ceasefire by Michael Longley. Put in mind of his own father and moved to tears, Achilles took him by the hand and pushed the old king gently away. But Priam curled up at his feet and wept with him until their sadness filled the building. Taking Hector's corpse into his own hands, Achilles made sure that it was washed, and for the old king's sake, led out in uniform, ready for Priam to carry, wrapped like a present, home to Troy at daybreak. And when they had eaten together, it pleased them both to stare at each other's beauty as lovers might. Achilles built like a god, Priam good-looking still, and full of conversation, who earlier had sighed, I get down on my knees and do what must be done, and kiss Achilles' hand, the killer of my son. It's a powerful poem, particularly for people like me, the people of Northern Ireland, who have come through 40 years of struggle, 40 years of bombing and shooting and killing each other. That what is needed now for the peace agreement to last is apologies, forgiveness. And that happens to be one of the most difficult things for a human being to do is to forgive, to extend forgiveness to someone who has hurt them terribly. And yet, if God can forgive us, if Priam can forgive Achilles, and if I can forgive some of the things that's happened to me in Northern Ireland, then that's evidence enough that we can all practice forgiveness. We all should practice forgiveness. And there's real freedom in practicing forgiveness, but it comes at a great cost. So.
Well, Billy Stevenson, I really appreciate this, man.
Thank you.
And thank you for this time.
Yeah.